I'm Angel.
And this is the Animaniacs podcast where we discuss and dissect different animes. So this is part 2 of our Neon Genesis analysis.
And we're going to start off right now with the smaller part of this discussion, which is going to be the art style of the anime. The art style of this anime, art style in all anime is important. The way that characters are drawn and the way they're represented show a lot in the anime, and it helps characterize those characters, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, and it also kind of shows like the time period, a lot of it. Mm-hmm. So, and Neon Genesis is no exception. It's very, very 90s.
Yeah. In the 90s, the art style for anime was a lot, like, sharper. Mm-hmm. So, like, you'll see, if you ever watch a 90s anime compared to, like, an anime now, characters that are drawn in animes now are very round. Their their heads are very round, circular. And everything's very circular. One, because it's easier to animate, and two, because it's cheaper to animate.
And also, like, 90s anime, the proportions are very different. Like, now, like in the 90s, everyone had, like, 10-foot long legs and then, like, 2-inch torsos. It
was very, like...
stylized.
Yeah, it was very long and skinny. Now it's a lot more, like, bubbly.
Yeah.
And you can do a lot more with the way that animes are drawn now versus the way they were drawn before.
Yeah.
It was just a lot harder, especially at the time, to do it, like, sharp.
It probably has to do a lot with, like, the technology that they
It's also the fact that they didn't really use computer drawn, like, today we use computer drawn characters. Before, this was all hand drawn. So it was easier to hand draw them, like, sharp, and it was easier to make sharp turns than it is to create rounder turns. Where, like, on a computer, if you're drawing on a tablet or something, it's easier to do round, like, circles than doing sharp points.
So that really, like, it really shows, like, with the times. Mm-hmm. So let's get into
It's not, like, anything crazy, but it is something we have to distinct, because all those, for the most part, like, especially nowadays, newer animes will try to go back to, like, that art style or try to make their art styles a little bit sharper, and it's nice to know the distinction between them because it helps characterize characters. If a character's more round, they're usually more happy. If they're sharper, they're usually more serious.
That makes sense a lot, especially, like, with Neon Genesis, with, like, the sharp characters and, like, how friggin' sad the show is. That makes sense. Okay.
So next we're gonna go over the basic lore of Evangelion, like the background information before the anime starts,
which
and
is
even
a lot.
After the anime starts. Yeah, it's a lot. We're gonna put a link in the description, a little 7-minute synopsis. It's one of our favorite videos. It's like so good. It's like easy to fit information, all packed up together.
Yeah, we highly recommend this video. Like, the guy, you could tell he made it on Microsoft Paint, and, like, the audio was very clearly, like, using the microphone from a computer.
Yeah.
But the information he gives, and he's very, like, clear and decisive at it. Like, we're gonna tell you now, but, like, he does a very good job.
Yeah, so his analysis is simple and easy to digest.
Yeah,
So, first it started off with the first ancestral race, which was basically
this was all before the show started.
This is all before the show.
Yeah.
So, I'll let you guys know when episode 1 actually starts. So, the show background information starts with the first ancestral race, which is, like, this group of aliens. They're, like, the first creatures to inhabit the universe. And they're basically gods. And they create the seeds of life, which are Adam and Lilith. Adam is the seed, or the fruit of life, and Lilith is known as the fruit of knowledge. Adam and Lilith also both come with their, like, separate moons.
Yeah, like...
Adam's moon is white, and Lilith's moon is black.
Yeah.
And so what the ancestral race does... Oh, yeah, and each moon and pair, so each Adam and Lilith, come with their own spear of Longinus. And that's what kind of locks them into, like, the planet. And so what the ancestral race does is they throw these moons over at every planet, one for each planet.
There's not supposed to be one Adam and one Lilith on the same planet. Yeah,
it's just one Adam at a planet and then one Lilith at another planet.
Yeah.
And what that does is that's what creates life at those planets. So planets with the Adam moon, and where Adam is bound to the planet, that creates life that's like the angels. And then if Lilith is bound to a planet, that creates life that's like normal for us, like animals, humans,
yeah.
like basic life.
So what happened was...
And if a person or a being was ever to possess both of the fruits, basically Adam and Lilith together, that person could become as powerful as the ancestral race, which is basically a god. So they were trying to be very clear and like not put two on the same planet, but they messed up and they accidentally put an Adam moon on Earth, and a Lilith moon ended up crashing into Earth before the angels could like be created through Adam, and that created the first impact, and that destroyed basically all the angels, and then it kind of locked Adam in place.
Yeah,
because Adam kept his spear, but Lilith lost her spear. So because Lilith lost her spear, she wasn't bound by anything.
She was able to spread humans and animals over like the billions of years.
Her energy, or her essence, which is the LCL, which you talk a lot about in the show when you watch it. It's basically the life energy that Lilith gives out, right? And that's what creates life on Earth. Adam, which is in the South Pole right now and kind of bound to the spear, is locked in place and can't do anything. It's just stuck there. Doesn't do anything. Lilith lands in Tokyo, like in Japan, and is bound there underground, right? So then after Lilith creates life, we fast forward
a couple million
years, and we get to the year 2000. There, the Katsuragi expedition decides to experiment with Adam, and so they go to the South Pole to do experiments and see what would happen with Adam and what Adam can do and stuff. And well, they decide one experiment would be cool is if they got a Lilith. So they basically if they got a human to touch Adam. So they were like, do it, dude, do it, bro.
With a combination of the human DNA and Adam.
The fact that Lilith's DNA are in humans, right? So when a human touched Adam, that created the second impact, which was a huge explosion.
And that's what wiped out like half of humanity.
Yeah, that's what wiped out half of all living things in the world.
Yeah.
It essentially like blew up half the world. So it tells us that if essentially that little part of Lilith, by the way, because a human is a very small part of
Lilith's DNA.
But if a Lilith were to ever touch an Adam, they'd destroy like everything.
Yeah, and that would cause the third impact.
So after the second impact, Adam becomes an embryo, and you see him through the show. He looks like a little lizard, basically. He's like in a little container.
Yeah, it's like a little orange thing.
And Karu is born with Adam's soul inside him. So he is basically a part of Adam. He's Adam's essence because Adam was destroyed.
He has Adam's soul, basically.
Gendo then creates Evas using Adam's DNA. So he creates clones of them. And he creates Eva Unit 000, right?
The first one was
and 02, right? Or 01?
01.
No, 02. Because
01 has the
01 is the essence of Lilith and Yui. So Gendo creates the first two Evas with Adam's DNA, and creates clones of him. So all the Evas are just clones of Adam, except for Unit 01, which is Shinji's Eva, and Shinji's Eva is made with Lilith DNA instead of Adam DNA. And after that, Seal,
or Sele, depending
or Sele, they find these things called the Dead Sea Scrolls, which are basically prophesized scrolls that were written by the first ancestral beings that predict the future, and they tell Sele how to start the third impact and essentially start what they want to do, which is called the Human Instrumentality Project.
We can stop there, from reading the timeline, and then just go more into depth about the episodes and stuff.
Well, no, because I want to get at least to the first episode.
You haven't gone there yet?
No, not yet. Okay. So they find the thing that starts the Human Instrumentality Project, which we'll talk about later. Sealy also, or Sealy, whatever the heck you want to call them.
It's tomato.
Yeah, whatever they're called. They also get Kuru and Adam from the South Pole. So Kaoru and Adam from the South Pole, and they're in possession of both of those things.
Yeah.
Yui, Shinji's mom, is working with Gendo, which is Shinji's dad, on the Eva units, on the Eva project. And so after he created Eva Unit 01, Yui was a test driver, and during the test drive, her body and soul was combined with Eva Unit's 01 LCL, and so she basically disintegrated into the unit.
And so now the unit is combined with her soul, which is why every time Shinji goes into the unit, he feels like there's like a certain sense of like calm there that you see with him.
And it's also why he's the only person that can drive the unit and not anyone else, because of the way he feels about his mom. The only other person that could probably drive it would be Gendo.
Ray's been in it though. There was an episode.
There was an episode?
Yeah,
you're right.
There was an episode where Ray and Shinji switched just for their own thing, but nobody could go into Asuka's.
Yeah. You're right. So
I remember because it was fucking weird.
Yeah. So, but that's why that's like that. That's why Shinji's like chosen to be in Eva Unit 01 because his mom was in there, right? So Yui gets absorbed, and then Gendo, who's distraught and depressed because his wife was taken away from him, basically, and it was his fault. He wants to like try to be with her again. So then he wants to start the human instrumentality project to unite with her. And the human instrumentality project is something that I think we should get into later. But now Seal and Gendo want to both initiate the project
for different
reasons, which again we'll talk about later.
Yeah.
And after that, they agree to work together. And then Gendo creates Rei with Yui and Lilith's DNA.
Yeah.
So that's why. So then Rei just becomes a clone of a mixture of Yui and Lilith.
Yeah, we'll go more into her psycho.
Yeah, she's
dynamics.
A very complicated character.
Very.
And then after that, episode 1 starts.
Okay, so let's get started on the first half of Neon Genesis. Like I think it was you had mentioned, basically most of it could all be covered in Evangelion 1.11. So with Neon Genesis, there's
actually, you're gonna explain, right?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. So go.
So Neon Genesis, there's the original like runtime like series, and then we have the rebuilds, which are just like they're basically like director's cuts, kind of like of remastered.
Well, no, it's not a director's cut. It's a whole new story. So it's like a reboot story, if that makes sense.
Okay.
So what happens in the reboot movies, right? Is everything from the first pretty much the first 3 angels up to like that pyramid angel. Do you remember it?
Yeah.
Everything up to that is normal, and after that scene of like him like having that heart to heart with Rei and they become friends, you find Kaoru on the moon, and like he was basically preserved there to try to stop the third impact from happening. And stop the end of Evangelion.
Okay, so it's a little different, but at least the beginning parts are the same.
So everything is the exact same. So you can actually, instead of having to sit through the first like few episodes,
you could technically just watch.
You can technically just watch the movie, and you get everything that you need from the movie, including character development, really, because the character development in the movie is fantastic, by the way. I highly recommend it. I watched it. I've seen this first movie about 3 times already now.
Jesus Christ.
And it's always amazing every time I watch it. And in fact, on the second viewing or third viewing, you pick up on a lot of things, which again we'll talk about later.
Okay. But we have the Rebuild series, and then we have Death and Rebirth, and then we have End of Evangelion, which for the most part here we're going to be talking about the show in general, like
just the show.
Yeah.
But we do want to differentiate the original show versus the Rebuild movies and Death and Rebirth.
Yeah.
like I said before, the original anime series is the original anime series.
So what episodes 1 through 26?
Yeah, episodes 1 through 26. The rebuild movies is like a new universe where things are happening almost in the same way, but are changing after the first movie. Mm-hmm. And it's essentially Kaudu's way of like trying to make sure that the third impact never happens.
Yeah.
And that way people don't die and everything stays okay.
Yeah, the Neon Genesis universe is constantly like
And
expanding.
it's also important to note that the last movie of that rebuild series
Hasn't come out yet.
hasn't come out yet.
No.
It's coming out soon. I think
it's next year.
I think it's supposed to come out within a year or something.
Yeah, it's come, and when
So
that happens, you'll see even more merchandise.
Yeah, and you should also go watch the movie and watch the rebuild movies because I hear a lot of good things about the first one and the third one sometimes.
Yeah, but for the purposes of this, we're going to be discussing episodes 1 through 26. So let's talk about the first 13 episodes. Like you said, you could cover most of that. Like, you get it all in 1.11.
But for the most part, the first half is introducing again, it says introducing our characters and giving them a personality, which is wonderful, by the way, in any anime to do that.
I mean, but personally, like, the issues that I have with the first half, I think most people do. It's like the different angel of the week.
And it's super boring.
It can be really boring.
It's tedious and repetitive.
Yeah, like, obviously you get, like, character development. Like, you really understand Shinji more. He's not just a coward, obviously. But it's really repetitive when you have an angel every single week. You feel like you're just watching any other, like, serialized show.
So I think the funny part, now that you say it, is the irony of it, right?
Yeah.
So, what's his name? Ano?
Ano. Hideaki Ano.
Hideaki Ano. He basically created Evangelion to be a big fuck you guys to the otaku fan base, or like to the shut-in community, right? Mm-hmm. And he just like was just kind of sick of it. He didn't like how people were shutting themselves in and not interacting with anyone. So he created this anime to try to show people that it's not good to be a shut-in. Mm-hmm. And there's a really interesting Reddit post or 4chan post that I saw.
A 4chan post?
Yeah, I think it was a Reddit post that quoted it from a 4chan post.
Sounds about right.
But it was about how Ano hates all his fans because they're all just basic weebs, and he doesn't like that that's the case, and that's why he keeps making like movies, not only just for money but for the fact that he's trying to show these people something and they just are completely ignorant and are not paying attention to his messages.
Don't you just love being insulted by one of your favorite creators? Mm-hmm. Like, I know, like, I do. It's fantastic, honestly. But I mean, he does have a point. Like.
Yeah, it's a really good. I think it's a really good like little thing to read, and it's really interesting. But it also makes sense because he's also gone and publicly said that he made this to not only fight through his depression, but try to help other people through their depression, and to critique on that otaku life culture. He doesn't want people to be shut in their house, not going out. He wants people to be out and interactive and being able to be with people.
Here.
Right?
I found the Reddit post. Let me read it really fast.
Yeah, go for it.
Is it this one?
Yeah, it's that whole thing.
Jesus Christ. Okay.
I don't think... Do you want to read it on...
Can you even find it here? Yeah, okay. So, Evangelion and why Hideaki Anno hates you. Real talk. If you never watched Neon Genesis Evangelion all the way through, everything you know about it is wrong. Although, for that matter, even the people who watch it all the way through are wrong about it. Mm-hmm. Let's talk about the creator. Hideaki Anno. Why he's happy when you are angry. If you like Eva, Hideaki Anno hates you. That's just how it is. If you can't wrap your mind around the basic truth, you are missing out on a lot of hysterical black irony. It's hard to explain to people who haven't grown up with anime in the 90s, or at least don't make the effort to go back and watch a lot of older anime, just how revolutionary Evangelion was to the industry. There was an expectation, even from people within the studio, that it would be cancelled within the first 10 episodes. They were given a hugely limited budget, which they famously used up before the final episodes. It was not only a psychological exploration of what it means to be depressed, but it was blatant dress down of mecha and harem anime. Mm-hmm. Oh, I didn't notice that.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The whole thing is that Shinji's surrounded by women the whole time. So it's actually a critique on that, too, which was very popular at the time as well.
We love that. Okay, so
In fact, it's actually still popular. Harem animes are still super popular.
and no, yeah, we're on High School
Yeah.
Hooked on them. We're literally
Yeah.
okay. It's a reverse harem.
Yeah.
But anyways,
But still.
the shit that otaku cult fap to constantly. Psychological breakdowns and meta commentary are so common in anime nowadays. People don't realize that it's a trend Eva more or less pioneered along with a bunch of other things. A large basis for Evangelion, which Anno has openly owned, is kind of intensely public therapy session. Anno is said to have a huge disenchantment with the otaku lifestyle, going so far as to say that lifestyle was akin to autism. He fell into a depression. That depression took form in Eva and basically started tearing apart a lot of what was common at the time. Do you want to talk about that part? Because that was a lot to unpack.
Yeah, so that's exactly what we're saying. They're like, this anime is extremely complex, and it would be good like not to read the rest of that because it goes go into the end of Evangelion, which you want to talk about later.
Talk about that later.
So let's go back, and so it's like a very complex anime, and having to know this is extremely important for the first half of Evangelion. It helps set up your characters as basic archetypes, which are also mimicking people, or at least what I believe are people.
Yeah. The thing is, like, Shinji feels more relatable in the sense that, in terms of protagonists at the time, they were all really, really brave or really smart, and Shinji's just like
super cowardly.
Yeah.
And what? Oh my god, I keep saying the wrong name. What Anno was trying to portray with Shinji was like if your basic otaku like person were just thrown in this world because they're always talking about how, oh man, if I was in this world, I'd be so cool, so badass. And
imagine actually being shoved.
Yeah, imagine actually being shoved into this position. Like a real person wouldn't be like, all right, I gotta do this because I gotta do it.
This is my destiny.
Yeah, no, a real person would be scared out of their mind. And that's what Shinji is supposed to represent, this like scared kid. He's only 14. He's not an adult. He doesn't even know what's going on, really.
Which is why it's ironic when people like shit on Shinji, because
You're shitting on yourself.
Exactly. 9 out of 10 people would react exactly the way he did, or even worse, especially with what he's been through in his life. Like when you go throughout the anime more and you see that.
It's really, really interesting to like take these parallels and like put them side by side and seeing how like all these characters interact with each other. You also have like characters like Rei, who was meant to be like super psychological, like in general. Like she's just such a weird character.
She
so
is
out
such
there.
a weird character, and like even the creator knew that. He didn't even know what he was gonna do with her.
Like for all we know, she could literally just be the characterization of like. It could be the characterization of like depression. Like really.
Kind of. She's more melancholic, kind of, just like existing.
Yeah.
But when we were introduced to her,
because Anno had an existential crisis. Remember? Yeah. He had his existential crisis after being after realizing that he was clinically depressed.
Yeah.
He had an existential crisis,
and
that's what was shown through Rei.
Yeah.
It's like your brain telling you like, yeah, this is fucked up.
And when we're introduced to her, like her and Shinji don't get along at all. Until I think it was it episode 3? That they had like the mutual like understanding kind of.
It was whatever episode, like the first time they actually like are okay with each other was after the Diamond Angel, which is probably episode like 8 or 9, because
up until that point they were basically like more snippy with each other because Shinji was very open about his distaste for his father.
And she's like super into his father because he's always so nice to her.
Yeah, and Shinji's never had his father be nice to him, so that was like a whole disconnect there. And then later,
it's also a reason why what's it called? Why Misato takes in Shinji.
Yeah,
because Shinji has problems with his father. And so does Misato, and that she feels bad for him, and she takes him in as like essentially his son. or her son.
Yeah, she sees herself in like the way that her relationship was with her father is kind of like how Shinji's relationship with
She even approaches Gendo on why are you such a good why are you like this to your son? That's so messed up. But like when you see like everyone sees him interact with Rei and he's like super happy and like super nice to Rei all the time, which is because she has Yui's DNA and he made her.
And he's always loved Yui more than he ever gave a shit about anyone or Shinji.
And that's why he cares so much about Rei.
Yeah. And then we need to introduce Asuka. So Asuka comes in as the third EVA pilot. She's German. And here we're introduced to both her and to... What's his name?
Ryoji.
Ryoji, which is which is Misato's former love interest. He's not like
super important, but he's important enough to talk about because he not only gives background to Misato, but he helps progress the story at the time because he gets the body of Adam and essentially takes it to Gendo so they can continue working on their
the human instrumentality project. And as far as his relationship with Asuka, he starts off as her guardian, and she's completely like enamored with him. Mind you, like all the pilots of the EVAs are about 14 years old.
Yeah.
And
they're all kids.
Yeah. And the thing with Asuka is as we learn more about her, we know that her mother died when she was younger and completely traumatized her.
She's a completely tragic character.
Yeah.
You find this all out in the episode where she basically gets mind fucked by that one angel.
She was mind raped.
Yeah, mind raped.
Deeply violated.
She was like violated. You find out more about her backstory later, but like her whole character, at least in my opinion, I don't think she's even that important as a character.
She's just deeply tragic.
Yeah, she's just meant to be a tragic character that's also meant to be the most tsundere character ever. Like she's supposed to be like the biggest critique on a tsundere character I've ever seen in my life.
And when she comes in, her whole reason for being is to be an EVA pilot. So when that eventually is stripped away from her, you see
her depression.
Absolute destruction of Asuka. And it's as awful as it is, it's so beautiful to watch. And you can't turn away.
It's important to note that Shinji, being the first depressed character, and is constantly depressed throughout the whole series, is also one of the only characters that helps her try to get through her depression. And she always refuses it because humans have this innate ability to just like shove people away when they're not feeling good.
The hedgehog dilemma.
Yeah, the hedgehog dilemma. They're always going to push away things that are trying to help them if they're like too scared because they're too scared or for whatever the reason. For
those of you that don't know what the hedgehog dilemma is, it's actually discussed in the show. I think it was, what's her name? Ritsuko?
Ritsuko.
Ritsuko.
The doctor.
It starts explaining it. What it is, like humans are like hedgehogs, and we want to be kept warm by other hedgehogs, but we can't because the quills on our backs would hurt each other. And that's essentially, like, that's so prominent in the show throughout with every character, between Masato and Ryoji and Shinji and, like, literally everyone in the show. Yeah. It's very prevalent.
The whole anime is extremely tragic. Extremely tragic. And it also mirrors, like, how we said in the first episode about the background information. It mirrors how Anno was feeling during this time and how his studio was being treated at the time and how everything was happening at the time for him. It was just, the whole anime just mirrors everything that happened there.
Yeah, it's pretty tragic. Okay, let's talk about second half. So at episode 16 is that's when they blew through the money at that point, right?
16 or 14. It was one of the two.
It was an even number. That's when they had blown through most of their budget, and they were really pressed for cash and for time because, as we mentioned in the previous episode, due to the sarin gas attacks, they were really behind on their scheduling. So we see a lot of like dead scenes, a lot of repeated frames, but this is also where we see the most and best parts of the show. Like if you ask anybody what their favorite episode is in Neon Genesis Evangelion, most of the time it's going to be from this second half.
Yeah, and I think it might be because of the fact that like it might have been because they blown out their budget that they had to work even harder to try to like really get the message across, and they were like, the first half they weren't really sure about where they wanted to go with the anime, right? But by the second half, they were all positive what they wanted to do. It was, let's do this.
Yeah, and not only that, like a lot of times limitations lead to some like the best creative like ideas, and we really see that here. This is really where the anime starts to shine for most people. But again, like we did mention last episode. Just kidding. In the last episode,
an anime, dude.
in the last episode, we talked about like the elevator scene, and
I love that.
Okay, but like let's talk about like the implications of the scene. That's when we really feel the tension that Asuka was feeling at the time, because she thought she had to be the best in order for anyone to love her, and she was really feeling a lot of like hatred towards Rei because Rei had a better sync rate than she did at that point. At that point, Asuka's mind was slowly deteriorating. Yep. So having to stand in that elevator with Asuka's pure rage and Rei just standing there, really just like you felt that awkwardness for all 53 seconds
and
of that scene.
It also helps show that they're kids, because children for the most part are very awkward. They don't really understand social interactions. And communication, yeah, like it shows not only that, but it also shows how the like community that watches it, like that otaku culture that he criticizes, how they react to people. A lot of the characters, a lot of the kids in the show are very awkward, and I think that's just something for the creator to show to the otaku culture, was like, hey, this is how you guys are. You need to fix yourselves.
Just letting you know you will suck.
This 54 seconds of elevator seat time is something that you would do in real life.
And that's something that stays consistent no matter like what remastering or whatever of the show you see.
If you pay attention to the way that the adults interact with the kids and the way they interact with each other versus how the kids interact with everything, you'll see that every time the kids are on screen, it's always super awkward. Yeah. Always. It's never not awkward.
And you really get to see that in this later half of the season, because we get to see far more character development. But speaking of character development, I really want to talk about Shinji's relationship with Kaoru.
Go for it.
Okay. So Kaoru comes in, I think it's like episode 23, 24.
Yeah, so he came in because Asuka couldn't drive the Eva.
Yeah.
And so Seal sent him in to try to get him to drive it.
Yeah, and as we mentioned earlier, he has the soul of Adam. So they bring him in, and Kaoru is very open with his feelings towards Shinji. And if you look at all the characters in the show, not a single one of them are ever open about their feelings or how they feel towards each other.
He's literally the exact opposite of not only all the humans or like all the characters of the show, but he's the exact, like, he's the guiding, like the shining light in the darkness.
Yeah.
He's what essentially everyone would want to be. Yeah,
and if you look at the ways he's drawn in some episodes, he looks visibly like a beacon of light.
Yeah, he's meant to, like, he's just drawn bright. He has white hair. He's just a bright character, and like, again, he's just this beacon. He's meant to be like this, almost like this like role model that people should like try to be, because he's essentially perfect.
Which is ironic because he's basically brought into the show to destroy everyone. But with his with his relationship with Shinji, he's supposed to say that he like loves Shinji, and he's the first character ever to tell Shinji that like, hey, I love you. However, in the Netflix adaptation, because Netflix, when they got the show, they completely scrapped the dubbing. They didn't scrap
they scrapped the dubbing?
They completely redid the dubbing.
Just the translations.
Whatever it was, they did their translations wrong.
Okay.
And even like the subtitles, everything was completely, they remastered it for like themselves.
Oh, that's dumb.
I know it's dumb, because I didn't get Kaoru saying, Shinji, I love you.
So you don't get the same impact.
I get Shinji, I think I like you.
I think I like you, bro.
No, but that's basically what happens. And then you see Shinji going through this whole, like, I've never been told, like, you're supposed to be like, wow, like, nobody's ever told Shinji that, like, he's never been told that he's been loved, not even by his father or by his mother.
Well, because his mother was dead.
Well, yeah, but he was, like, 4 years old, you know? Yeah. Like, his mom could have said something. Instead, you get like this whole like 14-year-old like, oh my god, nobody's ever told me they liked me before, hee, and he makes him sound it's not as like impactful, because when you hear that a character's never been told that they're loved before by anybody, it hits you harder than like never being told that they're liked.
Yeah. That was the one thing I know you've been talking. Nat has been destroying me with that. Like every time we have to talk about Evangelion, she talks about how she hates the fact that the translations were wrong.
Because that's messed up.
And I get that because it's not the same impact. Mm-hmm. The wordplay and like the way a script is written in like in an anime like Evangelion, it's so important, because saying I like you versus I love you, again, it's such a big difference.
Yeah.
So
there's also another, when we get to end of Evangelion, there in the opening scene, there's also a big change in what's being said, but we'll get to that later. But Kaoru really, after Shinji ends up having to kill the only person who's ever told him he loves him, that's when shit hits the fan. Yeah. It ends up becoming this whole thing, and eventually Nerve finds out why Kaoru's actually there, because he not only was he just sent there because of Seal to like start the third impact, but Kaoru has his own agenda. So he wants to stop it, and he puts Shinji in this position where Shinji has to choose whether or not to kill Kaoru or to kill all of humanity.
And have them be initiated by the project, which we'll talk about at the end of Evangelion, because that's where it starts. And Shinji ultimately decides to kill him, and it's one of the hardest things for Shinji to do,
and for the audience to have to see.
Because again, Kaoru was meant to be this beacon of light. He's like the only nice thing in this world of depression, and Shinji had to destroy it. And you can see it in Shinji's face and his eye, like the way he reacts, like he crushes him.
But and he's holding him before he crushes him. Like it's like the elevator scene, but even more like depressing, because you know Shinji's gonna crush him, but impact. He's like, it absolutely breaks. That's when every character really is broken.
After that's when shit hits the fan, and then of course, right after that in the show, they had to go ahead and... It was right after that, right? Yeah. Right after that scene, they go to episode 25 and...
Yeah, that's when we start going through the Human Instrumentality Project, right?
Yeah, but that's end of Evangelion. We're still on the second half of the episodes, because episodes 25 to 26 literally did not have enough money. And so it became an inner monologue. And that's why the fans were so mad. Because it ended with this super emotional scene and then just goes into this inner monologue with Shinji by himself, and like his mind, and like a bunch of people from his life like talking to him in his mind, and it's so awkward. It's like at the time it was weird to see, because it like everyone was like, where's the ending?
It was built up to be this big like fight, or like this big like show that was gonna go on, and you got instead an inner monologue, which is fine. Like the inner monologue itself was really good, but
the inner monologue I think was really good, because it like I think Anno like knew that people weren't getting the message, so he really wanted to make it clear, like, hey, this is the message I'm trying to give you guys, but everyone shitted on it.
Yeah, because without context, they didn't understand.
No, people still don't understand. They just don't like it, because they're just dumb.
But when you watch those last 2 episodes, you do see like the monetary constraints a lot, because half the time they were still on paper. Yeah. And like, or just colored in. We also see the other timeline. But
it's one of the best closures to the ending, because it's what essentially sets up end of Evangelion. And these last 2 episodes are the thought process for Shinji during his final choice in end of Evangelion, which we'll talk about when we get there. Yeah. But these last 2 episodes I honestly think out of every anime I've seen, these 2 episodes were the best closure I have ever gotten from any anime.
Controversial.
It's so beautiful the way they did everything, the way he had his inner monologue with his like all these people in his life that impacted his life, and how he ended up choosing everyone around him over himself, and essentially got over his depression, like in a way, like in a sense, quote unquote.
In a sense.
In a quote unquote got over his depression.
In terms of the show,
or like
yes.
not got over it, but like started learning how to deal, accepting with his depression, and like trying to deal with it instead of just running away from his problems. Because we see throughout the whole series that he's essentially avoiding his problem, and he's stuck in this loop where he's avoiding his problems, and then it gets to the point where he has to deal with it. He deals with it, and then it goes back, and it's like the best way to see it is like in the first half, how he records and repeats tracks 25 and 26 on his
MP3 player.
On his MP3 player. It's the same thing with him. He's just stuck in this cycle of being like, okay, I can't do this, and then he faces his fears, and then he's like, I can't do this, I can't do this, I can't do this, and then he faces his fears,
and then he goes back between tracks 25 and 26.
25 and 26, and it's just constant loop. And this is finally, these last two episodes are what finally break the loop.
Yeah.
And everyone claps for him because he's accepting them for who they are. And that, I think that's beautiful. Absolutely beautiful.
But nonetheless, most people have their own strong opinions when it comes to the ending of Neon Genesis, which is good. It's good that the show is able to stay relevant and people still talk about the ending to this day.
Yeah.
But now do you have anything else to add?
Yeah, I also want to add that like this ending, those last two episodes along with the end of Evangelion together are what help like create the different messages that you can see, and like by themselves they're good, but together with the end, like both episodes along with the end of Evangelion are amazing and beautiful and have to be talked about. So now we'll go into end of Evangelion.
Okay. Now let's talk about the
famous scene that Nat wants to talk about.
No, let me talk about... Wait, hold on. So, I was warned about this, first of all, and I was like, okay, I mean, Shinji's gonna have some standards for himself, right? In the beginning, I thought that he was gonna go to a different room, but he didn't go to a different room. He stayed right there. But anyways, in terms of the translation, it's supposed to say I'm so fucked up, but the Netflix translation says something completely different. It's like I'm a messed up human. Something like that. Like it's a very like...
It's not as impactful.
Yeah, saying I'm so fucked up. Like that's what you need to hear.
And what she's referring to is that opening scene with...
They know what the opening scene is.
Do you want to say it? I want to say it.
Okay, basically, Shinji goes... Trigger warning, by the way. So Shinji goes into the nurse... It's like the hospital room where Asuka is, and accidentally tugs on her shirt. And he...
You want me to say it?
Yeah, it's so gross.
What happens is, and no trigger warning because that's for bitches.
No, because like that's actually really disgusting.
All right, so what happens is he is with Asuka and he's like there with him, and up to this point, Shinji has this awkward relationship with all the females around him where he loves them, but because he's never really had anyone to love him before, he doesn't know the differences between love, right? And so that's what kind of sets up the whole character dynamic in this ending part. But the opening scene is with Asuka and Shinji, and Shinji's there with Asuka, and he's like, boy, oh boy, that's a sleeping grill. I gotta, and he goes, and then
he gets yogurt all over his hand.
He ejaculates on her and his hand, and says, "I'm so fucked up," which that scene alone was meant again as a big fuck you to the fans, because everyone in the community that watches Neon Evangelion, like all the basic anime otaku people, talk about how she's so hot. They fetishize
this 14-year-old girl,
and that's so messed up.
That's a problem.
The fact, and it was even more messed up was the fact that she was sleeping. Like, he did it while she was in a coma,
Hovering
basically.
over her.
Hovering over her. And he wanted to show people that's essentially what you're doing to these characters. You need to stop. This is disgusting. And that was one of the most beautiful ways to show it.
And it really does set up like the rest of the movie, because like I felt deeply violated watching that scene, and I felt deeply violated throughout the rest of the movie.
And you're supposed to.
It's really supposed to like grab you by your hair and look at yourself in the mirror and think about what you've done.
Yeah. Again, I still think it's one of the best endings ever. Not only because of the irony and the satire, but strictly because of how well it like closes out all these different characters' chapters. Like the way it kind of closes Shinji, like it just clears Shinji's loop. The way that Asuka feels towards Shinji at the end, the way Rei is, the way Misato's character was developed. Like everything just worked out perfectly. And so another good scene from that movie was right before, like, Shinji again is doing this whole loop thing where he's like, I can't do it, I'm a little bitch, whatever. And so Misato finds him. And Misato, I think, was planning on sacrificing herself or something.
Remember, Shinji, for most of the movie, he's like curled up in a ball. And what happens...
He's just super scared. It's like, he's scared beyond what the show shows you. He's scared. This is like the final time he's ever scared, and it's the worst time he's ever scared.
Because like now NERV headquarters are being completely like attacked by Seele, right?
Yeah.
By like raided and attacked by Seele.
Because, okay, this is where we can get into like the Human Instrumentality Project.
Yeah.
So Seele is attacking NERV because they want to initiate the Human Instrumentality Project already, because they're sick of it. They're tired of waiting. They want it to happen.
Yeah.
And what the Human Instrumentality Project is it is a this plan that they came up with to essentially combine all humans
into
one big
LC orange juice.
Yeah, the LCL. So they wanted to melt people down into the LCL and everyone become one big organism together. And what that would do is that would create no one in the world would ever be depressed. They'd never feel insecure. Everything would be one. No pain. No one would have any flaws because no one is separated from each other. Everyone's the same thing. And it's like it's essentially everyone being one. It's essentially like the biggest community, I guess.
Yeah, as Kauto had explained it, humans all have their own ET fields, and with the Human Instrumentality Project, that's breaking away, and everyone becomes one whole being. Nobody feels like alone.
Because what the AT fields in the show is for angels, it's what protects them from outside sources and shields them from missiles and stuff. Yeah. But humans, we find out through Kaoru that humans also have AT fields, and that is the AT field that humans create are emotional AT fields, basically. They're the ones that shut people out and stop. And like when you're depressed and someone tries to approach you, you pretend to be happy. That's your AT field activating to stop that person from getting too close to you.
Yeah, it's like the hedgehog's dilemma, which we discussed earlier. Consider them like your quills.
So what Seal wanted to do again was essentially break everyone's AT field and become one big organism so no one would have to feel like that ever again. And the reason Gendo wanted to do it was just so he could be with his wife again. Because, Yui was taken into Lilith's LCL, right? And the only way he could be with her again is for him to be into the LCL field. So he gave up on himself. Like Gendo's such a complicated character because he gave up before Shinji gave up.
Yeah.
Which is really, really hypocritical, I guess is the right word?
Yeah, because he was constantly forcing Shinji
to go out.
Yeah, and like not grow up, but like to not give up and shit like that.
Well,
and
no, I guess, to grow up, to stop being a little bitch, and to go out and do what he has to do. And yet he's already given up and is already willing to rid himself of humanity just so he can be with quote unquote be with his wife, even though he'll never feel her ever again.
Yeah. He just... Yeah. Gendo, we could do a whole thing on Gendo, but that's another...
What else? Back to Misato, right? So that one scene with Shinji and Misato, after all that crazy depression, he ran away.
He ran away, and Misato had to literally, like, grab him and was like, you get in the robot. Like,
get in the robot right now. And he was like, I don't know if I can do it. It's too much for me. And then...
And she gives him this whole speech. She kisses him and then shoves him into an elevator.
Yep.
And then she was shot beforehand. And then...
So Misato basically sacrifices herself for Shinji after kissing him.
Which, by the way, we could have a whole psychoanalysis on that too.
And it's like the weirdest thing because this whole time she's meant to be like this
maternal figure.
Yeah, this maternal figure, and yet she's still part of the harem, which was fucking weird. It was sick. It was fucked up, and that's what it was meant to do. It was meant to be fucked up. Like, it got to the point where even Misato throughout the whole series didn't know how she felt for Shinji, because at first she was like, yeah, I'm just like taking care of him, right? And then as things keep going, she like doesn't know what she is to him, because Shinji doesn't know what he is to her, like what she is to him. And because of how confused he was, he made her confused.
That also exemplifies just how like the episodes were ran episode by episode. It wasn't just one big script and then they animated it. It was done.
I also think it shows how one person who's depressed, even if they don't like quote unquote show it, them being depressed enough can affect others around you.
Yeah.
Your important people around you. He basically affected his mother at that point, his stepmother, right?
Yeah.
He was so depressed that he affected her in such a weird way, and it wasn't healthy.
Yeah, it's fascinating to see how like the web of the characters and we have to wrap this up. We have to see like that web of characters. Okay.
And
anything else you want to cover?
Well, again, this whole ending is
we
amazing.
have to like move on.
I know. Don't worry. So the whole ending, after that scene, we get Shinji manning up and going out and doing what he has to do. And while he's getting ready to go out, Asuka's already out there.
Oh my god.
And defending everyone and trying to stop Seal because she's trying to be her own individual being, because she already got through her depression.
And at first, like, you think she has it in the bag.
Yeah,
like,
you think she has it, and then she dies.
She gets fucking destroyed.
She dies.
She dies, but like it's so tragic.
And she's meant to be this tragic character.
It's such a tragic death because you finally feel like you felt
she did it. She clearly
finally did it. You know,
did it, and
then she gets absolutely eaten by these man-made like Eva things.
And not even like, it's not even like
whatever death.
Yeah, it's sick.
Gruesome.
It's super horrible how bad it was.
Words can't describe it. You have to watch it. If you're listening to this and you haven't seen End of Evangelion, like, go watch it. Jesus Christ.
After that, we get the scene with Gendo and Rei underneath where Lilith is, and that's where Gendo finally initiates
the Human Instrumentality
Project. And so Rei commences the third impact
by entering Lilith.
Yeah. And she becomes huge.
She becomes like a god, basically.
Yeah, she becomes a god.
God Rei.
And she breaks everything. And all the people in the world, their AT fields get destroyed, and they all become part of the LCL.
Yeah, what it is, like, these mini like rays kind of show up to different people in the person they love the most, and then they break that person's AT field. So, like, for example, one of the lab techs, I forget her name specifically, but she gets Ritsuko? What's her name?
Dr. Ritsuko.
Yeah, that's who shows up to her to break her AT field, and then we get Gendo gets Yui to break his AT field.
It becomes this internal conflict of whether or not to join the LCL or be apart from it. And so Shinji, who's in his mecha holding the Spear of Longelus, goes through episodes 25 and 26.
Yeah.
And goes through his whole internal monologue and decides, I don't want this to happen. I need to have my own feelings, and I need to do this because it's not right for me to just be okay with this. And he breaks the spear.
And he recognizes that, yes, he'll be hurt, but it's okay.
But it's okay because he has people that'll help him get through it.
So beautiful, honestly.
And so he breaks the spear, and instead of staying in the LCL, his body comes out of the LCL.
Yeah.
And he swims back to shore.
And he sees
And
Asuka,
the only other person that refused to join was Asuka.
who also had her own, like, breaking point.
And she's alive again. And Shinji, the very ending of this movie was so fucked up and so beautiful. Because what Shinji does is he walks over to her, or he crawls over to her. He
wraps his hands around her throat.
Yeah, wraps his hand around her throat and like chokes her, and then stops himself from choking her because she's the only one left, and he knows this.
Plus,
even though he hates her.
But she reaches out her hand and like caresses his face and is like, "Dude, like, what are you doing?" Like,
she caresses his face and then says,
"Disgusting."
You're and says disgusting.
Yeah. Period. That's it.
That's it. And the movie ends. And that ending was wonderful because it shows that Shinji did not enjoy Asuka's presence, nor anyone should, because she was kind of a bitch.
She was kind of a bitch.
Kind of a bitch is kind of an understatement. She was a huge bitch.
Okay, but like then you see her backstory and you're like, oh,
yeah, but she's
damn.
still a bitch.
Oh my gosh.
A bitch is a bitch.
Okay, but like we stand Asuka. But anyways.
And then Shinji recognizes after his whole thing that he doesn't like her. He realized that the love that he has for her is like a very
duality.
Hateful love.
Yeah, he loves to hate her.
Yeah, he loves to hate her. And she loves to hate him.
Yeah.
And so that's why it becomes like this very loving but hateful moment for them at the very end. Because they're the last two people on Earth, because everyone else was okay with being in the LCL.
And that kind of leaves Shinji and Asuka as like a new Adam
and Eve.
Which is fascinating to think about nonetheless.
And everything in the show... there's a lot of religious
so much. If you know absolutely anything about Christianity or Judaism, like there's so much imagery like throughout the show. If you enjoy looking at that stuff and you haven't seen Neon Genesis for some reason, this is like the show for you.
Yeah, this one, and then I also recommend Devilman, but that's another anime. That's Devilman Crybaby, because Devilman in the first one was not that good. And then last, our opinions and feelings on the show. Yeah. Nat, you can go first because I already know your answer. And everyone should know your answer by now.
Okay, the show itself is fantastic and I have so much respect for it. I felt deeply violated to a point, like I thought it was somebody actually speaking out to me, and I think that was his intention, and I have a lot of respect for it. I do enjoy the show and I do recommend it, but you have to have the stomach for it. If you don't have the stomach for it, not even necessarily gore, just intense psychological analysis and really messed up shit, this isn't the show for you. But besides that, I would recommend the show. And if you like 90s anime, it's fantastic.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to say that to this day, I saw this anime maybe 2 years ago now, 3 years ago, after I've seen a bunch of anime. And I can say to this day that this is a top 3 anime for me. Top 3.
Top 3.
Yeah, it is definitely up there. It might be my number 1, like, best anime I've ever seen in my life. It might be number 2 or number 3. And my top 3 is very, like, it's kind of hard to distinguish between, honestly. But this is actually one of the best animes I've ever seen in my life.
Oh, yeah.
Everything that was being animated or written or said, everything had purpose. It was so beautiful. It's sad to me that a lot of people don't appreciate it the way it should be appreciated, and that a lot of people hate on such good character development and such good characters, especially Shinji. Shinji's such an underrated character. He's such a beautiful, well-written character.
Yeah. And like between like the opening, the characterization, just everything the anime did, you have to, whether you like it or not, you have to respect it. Like it really the reason anime is the way it is today is because of this show.
Yeah.
So we have to have respect for your elders, you know. So is there anything we're missing?
I don't think so. I think we're good to close, right? So
yeah.
If you want to follow us, you can follow us on Twitter at the which is it? At Animaniacs Podcast, right?
I think so.
Or at Animaniacs Cast, we'll tell you right now.
Okay, so if you want to follow us on our social medias, our Twitter is AnimaniacsCast and our Instagram is Animaniacs Podcast. We also do have a Patreon. It's called the Animaniacs Podcast. Angel, can you tell them more about our Patreon?
All right. Our Patreon is going to be a place for you guys to donate to us, and we'll give you incentives to donate. You'll get certain episodes earlier. Oh, you'll get the next episode a few days earlier than normally scheduled, and a bunch of other stuff that we're planning, because right now we are recording really early.
Yeah.
We haven't really, or at least I nor Nat have come up with other ideas, but we are planning on doing so before we release these first 2 episodes.
So if you want to keep updated, definitely check out our social medias. Angel, where can they find you?
They could find me at Gamer100Nerdy on Twitter. And that's it for the most part. I pretty much specifically use Twitter for the majority of my social media.
Yeah, and I use both Twitter and Instagram. My handles are the same. It's at NatJimenez16. So if you want to just come on and talk to us or have any suggestions, we are almost always on either one of those.
Yep, and important to note, if you have any suggestions for future episodes, we're more than happy to listen.
Yeah.
Reach out to us at our email, at our Twitters, at anywhere. And if this is on YouTube, reach out in the comment section.
Yeah, we'll be there.
Yeah.
Do you want to let them know what we're going to be doing next week?
All right. Sure. Next week, what was the plan? Let's check really quick.
Next week we're going to be covering Ouran High School Host Club.
Yeah. And
the following week we'll probably be doing Fire Force,
maybe.
Yeah.
Well, we're still deciding on that last one, but we are doing Ouran Host Club,
which is one of my favorite animes. So I hope you enjoy
and it won't be a 2-parter.
No, sadly, it's a 1-parter, but
Yeah.
it makes sense. So,
besides that, I think we're all good, right?
Yeah.
All right. So,
all right.
have a wonderful day, everybody, and thank you so much for listening to our podcast.
All right, have a good one. Thanks, guys. Bye.